Welcome back. Let's talk hair. Sometimes it can be hard to tell if the hair fall you're experiencing is just a little bit of shedding or something more serious. So if you are concerned about the extra strands that you're leaving all around the house, our hair expert Sal Leonetti is here to break down the root causes of hair loss to help your tresses thrive. Sal, it's good to see you. And you know, this is something a lot of us are worried about, so it's great that we're talking about it.
Hi, Tracy. It's so nice to see you. And you know, when it comes to hair loss for male or female of any kind, whether it's shedding, hair loss, balding, it's stressful, and that doesn't help the situation. The best thing to do is to try to assess the situation and figure out how we can make it better.
Absolutely. Okay, so can you break down the difference between hair shedding and hair loss?
Absolutely. Hair shedding is something that we actually go through every day. Now, a lot of people don't know is we actually lose about 50 to 100 hairs a day regardless. It's unnoticed, right? Now, when you start losing in the upwards of 150 a day, you could be going through something called excessive shedding, we call it. There's different reasons for that, which we'll get into shortly. Hair loss is when the natural balance of the hair has been interrupted. So what that means essentially is you're losing more than you're growing back. Okay, so also reasons for that, and there's ways to combat that. And we're going to learn some new words today. So the medical term for hair loss is alopecia.
Alopecia. Listen, for men, women, and everyone else, there is a real fear of hair loss and alopecia. It's something that we've tied our identity to our hair. So here's something interesting. You talked about shedding. And I know the pets do the seasonal shedding, but apparently so do the humans, right?
We do. We do. Seasonal shedding is a real thing. Now, in our chair, we see it every day. It coincides with a couple things. The end of our growth cycle, where essentially the dead hair comes off and the new hair grows in, and season. We notice it on the season change. It could happen once or twice a year. One thing to keep in mind is when it's that type of shedding, kind of like a global shed throughout. You don't notice any sort of noticeable bald spots, but you might notice your hair is feeling a little more limp than usual. Now, this is usually happening, and you're noticing it in your combs, you're noticing it in your towels, and you're noticing it in that infamous drain that us dads and husbands clean out a lot of the times, and we don't enjoy it. I'm just going to throw that out there. So I thought it was a good opportunity to say that. However, my suggestion for seasonal type shedding is it has to happen. It's temporary. It reverts back to normal. Just go easy on the hair. A little TLC, a little extra hydration, and you'll get through it.
Okay, so what might be no one likes the drain hair. It's gross, but I'm sorry, the dads and husbands have to clean it. Talk to me about other reasons why we might be shedding.
Stress. Stress is a massive reason to shed, lose, and sometimes thin hair. So when it comes to stress, what actually happens is our follicles go into what we call a resting phase. Another new word for you is called telogen euplovium. Try saying that backwards a few times, but that is the reason that stress does that to our hair. If you excessively brush it during this period, you'll notice that you're losing a lot more than typical shedding, just seasonal shedding. Now, other reasons for stressful situations that contribute to hair loss at times as well would be pregnancy, illnesses, and medications. But one big reason that I want to touch on right now is lots of clients are going through it. A dear friend of mine went through it as well. After having COVID, right, you experience what they're calling long COVID, and the trauma that was put on their body, they're experiencing hair loss, some of them for up to 6 months, in upwards of 300 hairs a day. Now, if you had COVID and you're going through this, talk to your doctor. You might be going through this. And this too will pass, but again, trying not to stress during these situations is usually key, but I know it can be very hard.
Okay, so now let's talk about a little bit more extreme loss. So we're going beyond shedding and we've got hair loss. Talk to us a bit about that.
Okay, so again, when it comes to extreme loss, we look at health and illnesses and different medications that you're taking that can lead to this, okay? Another really big one that women go through that sometimes they think they're not affected by it, like men who are affected by male pattern baldness. It's a similar situation for women where because of their genetics, they can just lose and thin their hair. And where we see it is usually around the bang area or at the very top on the hairline section. So that's why you'll have a lot of women that say, I have very flat hair on top, but everything else seems the same. You could be experiencing something a bit more along the lines of hair loss. Now, another big reason for hair loss is aggressive styling. Okay, ponytails, braids, and just overall being too rough with the hair. There's a name for this as well. We call this traction alopecia. If you're doing that to yourself and you're noticing that you're seeing a lot of breakage, especially around the hairline, you need to try to go easy with it. Maybe change your style and be a bit more gentle on the hair.
Okay, any other tips you can give us to try and treat our hair a little bit more kindly so that we're staying out of situations where we are losing our hair unnecessarily?
Well, it comes down to what the reason is. And again, that's why I said at the beginning is you got to assess what's causing these problems, right? If it's genetics, there's not much you can do about it. If it's as a result of being aggressive with your hair, just go a bit easier. And overall, just know that if it's typical seasonal shedding, be a bit gentle with the hair and know that it will pass.
Absolutely. And also, bald is quite hot on women and men. I'll just throw that out there. So it's not the worst thing ever if you're losing all your hair.
It sure
right,
is.
Sal? Okay. Super hot.
That's for sure.